Starfire costume is finally done, and I also collected some things that I wanted to add into my journal just to finish out the project. So we're gonna talk about why I did what I did for the costume while I'm journaling. This is what the sketch looks like from last time. My family has always been really big into Halloween, and I've been sewing since I was very young. I have a very early memory from my mom saying that my Halloween costumes had gotten too complicated, so I was gonna start having to sew them myself, which I think is really funny and also pretty spot on for me. There's a lot of things about Starfire that I feel a connection to. She is an alien princess from a planet called Tamaran, and on this planet, everyone can absorb ultraviolet light and use that for super strength, use that to fly, be able to translate languages. She is the princess of Tamaran, so she also is an excellent fighter. I gravitate more towards earlier interpretations of her character from the comic books, but the versions of her that exist in Teen Titans, like the 2000s animated series, and Teen Titans Go, I just don't really seem to connect to as much. In those versions, I feel like she's been watered down, made to be a less authentic version of herself. For those reasons, I like to draw more inspiration from the comic books whenever I make a costume for Starfire. This is my second time making a costume for Starfire. The first time that I did it, I drew a lot of inspiration from her Super Sons look, which is the purple gloves all the way up to here, purple all the way around. This year, I wanted to be a lot more creative about what the costume looked like, which is why I ended up incorporating different textures of fabric and a little bit of a different cut of the bodysuit. For this look, there was a lot of different things that I wanted to incorporate. The top things that I wanted to really make sure made it into the final costume and the final look were big red, almost perm-like hair that she debuted with. I also wanted to incorporate green somehow to represent the Starbolts, and obviously there was a lot of purple. The fashion eras that I wanted to draw inspiration from for this look were the 1980s and then Y2K nostalgia. I think those two eras play off of each other really well. Both eras are also important to how Starfire appears in pop culture. She debuted in 1980. She had pretty important appearances or significant appearances in the early 2000s with the Teen Titans animated series, Teen Titans Go, and now with the HBO Titans live action series. The 80s is really known for having big hair, big accessories, bold and glittery makeup. There was a lot of neon, colorful prints. Y2K nostalgia, because I do want to include a modern twist, obviously draws back on all of the silver that everybody was into. Y2K featured a lot of layering. There's a lot of metallics, there's a lot of transparent elements. There's also a lot of big platform shoes. A lot of overlap between 1980s and Y2K nostalgia that I think made a really good mix. I also wanted to make sure that there was a nod to Starfire's original imagery somehow in this look. To do that, I drew on current it girls or pop stars, singer, dancer, actress types. The things I ended up making for my costume, obviously the bodysuit. I had planned to make gloves and this didn't go very well, so I didn't end up using them in the final look. To complete the look, there's a few things that I did to incorporate things that I couldn't necessarily incorporate into the bodysuit. First of all, I re-dyed my hair. I initially dyed my hair red for the first time last year when I was Starfire for the first time. And I think that was really transformative and really helped me take her confidence even after Halloween was over. To incorporate the Starbolts, I went and got my nails done to match my costume. So this is what they look like. There's a lot of layers that went into this nail set. First of all, there's a pink jelly at the bottom. The next layer alternates between my fingers. So some fingers have a green-yellow duochrome. Some fingers have pink-green duochrome. Over all of them, there's this silver chrome. And then obviously we have a little bit of details that bring in the Y2K nostalgia and also the stars. The nails are always shifting color, especially depending on the lighting. I thought that was a really cool touch to represent the star bolts. Form of energy can't really be contained. It's supposed to look inorganic. There was a lot of sparkle shimmeriness that was in the whole costume, and the makeup was no different. I used a couple products that were from REM Beauty. I kept the makeup pretty minimal, added in some graphic eyeliner with a light blue color, which doesn't really show up on camera, but I know it's there, so it's okay. Everything else was just kind of my everyday makeup plus a little extra sparkle. Everything did a really good job of capturing kind of a shiny, ethereal finish to the skin. For the final look, I wanted to make sure that even though the bodysuit was going to be dominating the silhouette and making it more form-fitting, I really wanted that to be balanced out by more of a statement. I found these really cool boots. They're by Azalea Wang, and they're also boots that Tate McRae has worn on tour, which tied in singer pop star It Girl perfectly well. The other little detail that I added from my personal collection were just a little pair of star earrings. The construction for this costume was more challenging by far than last year. And that is because it is a different pattern, which presents new challenges for sure. My costume did end up being pretty close to the first sketch. There are a couple of things that I ran into while I was sewing that had to change on the fly. On the back of the costume, this is curved. Originally, I wanted it to be pointed, like pointing towards the zipper. You can see that a little bit here. I wasn't paying attention when I sewed the mesh in, only realized when I was trying to put the back panels together. It was either change the design or undo hours of my work. A lot of the times in sewing, you would make a prototype called a toile out of muslin or a similar fabric to what your final piece is going to be made out of. Because this project is more unfinished than I'd like it to be, I'm gonna switch my mindset and consider this the prototype for next year's costume. The fit issue that I ran into happened as I was trying on my costume for the first time. I realized that I had not cut the lining on the bias of the fabric, which means it didn't have the stretch that I needed. And as a result, I could not zip my costume all the way closed. And that's also why there's no pictures of my costume from the side or the back. Love this pattern. Now that I know what the fit issues are, I'm gonna work them out, finalize the pattern, redraft 2 pieces to make sure everything is exactly the way they want it, and have that pattern already set to go for next year. There are 4 different types of fabric. We have this scuba knit fabric, this mesh fabric, silver, and then this bullet fabric. The bullet fabric is 4-way stretch. This mesh fabric I would consider 6-way stretch. Silver also had 4-way stretch. The fabric that did not have 4-way stretch was the scuba knit fabric that I ended up having the lining. There are a couple material challenges that I faced while I was sewing this costume. Those were with the mesh and the silver fabric. The silver fabric, for whatever reason, would cause a jam in my machine every single time I tried to sew with it. Any time that the silver was facing the feed dogs, there was a jam, which was very frustrating. Early on, it caused a jam so bad that my sewing machine did not move, and I had to spend a couple hours to take my sewing machine apart and fix it. The cover is still off. The way to avoid a kind of jam like that is to sandwich your pieces of fabric in between tissue paper, and then as you're sewing the material will get pushed through the sewing machine by the feed dogs. The needle will perforate the tissue paper, and the tissue paper is thin enough where it won't affect your needle or anything. So you end up with tearaway tissue paper, a perfect seam, no jams. For the mesh was also pretty tricky. It was very delicate. As a result, there is a little bit of bunching in some of the seams that were tighter to get into. On the back, there's a hole. I mis-sewed, and as I was seam ripping, there was a hole in the mesh. And again, the only way to fix that was to replace the entire mesh panel. I don't know a way to fix that off the top of my head. If you have any advice, let me know. I would really appreciate it. I ended up sewing macrame cord into these channels to give it body and to not have it collapse in on itself. Last year I had the same piping details on the front, but there was nothing in it. So they puckered, they didn't look super clean. This looks a lot better. So I was really proud with how that technique ended up. Strangely enough, when I tried on my costume for the first time, I was a little bit emotional. There's a pretty big design difference between my costume from this year and my costume from last year. Last year, I was in a very different place, a whole different city. This year, completely different mindset, completely different place in my life. And I feel like that really came through when costume shows a lot more creativity, creating my own design into this character. It was emotional to see the growth and the difference and my own growth as a person compared to the pictures that I had from last year. I will be making it again for next year, this time with the closing zipper. And there are also some things that I have never incorporated into my Starfire costumes that I'm really kind of dying to. I totally thought that this is going to be like my last time making this bodysuit, and maybe I would make different gloves or have different accessories, but I was so convinced that this was going to be my last one that I thought of everything, or what I think is a pretty smart design choice. This is the collar. In most of her costumes, she has a green gemstone. There's not a green gemstone on this one, but there is a pocket on the inside. Put a magnet on the inside, put a gem on top, and then be able to take that gem off when I wanted to wash it, or if I wanted to switch up what the gem looks like, a gem that lights up in the future, then I think that would be really cool. So I had made this pattern with room for this costume to grow and develop without me having to sew an extra bodysuit, which is hilarious and a little bit ironic. I just finished putting the last little fabric swatch into my journal. So we have the blue fabric up here, scuba mesh, silver fabric, and this is from the packaging from the products that I used for the makeup look. So this project is officially done. Kind of crazy to say considering I've been working on it a lot longer than I planned it to. Overall, I'm really proud of how this costume turned out. I have never shared any of my work before, so I'm also proud of myself for doing that. I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun making this costume. I had a lot of fun sharing my work. I am so grateful for the support that I've gotten so far. I think it's really insane to have strangers on the internet supporting my work. Looking forward to sharing more of my projects. I'm Maddie and I make stuff. Along to see what I make next.